Hello, digestible listeners, and welcome back to the Digestible Podcast, where we give you all the health and wellness information that you need in an amount of time that your busy day can handle, and we make it easily digestible. I'm Staci, along with my sister and co-host Melissa, and today we have Ashley Gearhardt. Missy, where did you find Ashley Gearhardt?
Okay, well, so I was at this fundraiser for an organization called Eat Real, because I want to give them a plug. And they're a nonprofit that hopes to bring delicious, nutritious, and planet-sustaining food to students all across the U.S., and so they've got a great program. So I overheard Dr. Gearhardt talking about a study that she was doing, and I was like, oh my God, you've got to come on the podcast. This is amazing. And she had actually just been interviewed on USA Today. Why don't you give our listeners a little background on Ashley?
Yes, Ashley Gearhardt, PhD, is a professor of psychology at the University of Michigan. While working on her doctorate in clinical psychology at Yale University, Dr. Gearhardt became interested in the possibility that certain foods may be capable of triggering an addictive process. She developed the Yale Food Addiction Scale, which has been cited over 800 times and translated into over 10 foreign languages. Her areas of research also include investigating how food advertising activates reward systems to drive eating behavior and the development of food preferences and eating patterns in infants. And she's done studies on how certain food environments trigger food preferences. She has published over 100 academic publications, and her research has been featured on media outlets such as ABC News, Good Morning America, The Today Show, The Wall Street Journal, and NPR, and we are so lucky to have her.
We are. Enjoy.
Ashley, welcome to the podcast. We're so excited to have you here.
Well, thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you. So, you started off your career learning about food, addictions, and the specific elements of food themselves, but you've shifted to the environment in which foods are presented to us. So, starting with food, ultra-processed foods can be addictive. Can you explain to us why?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I started my career as an alcohol addiction researcher. And so I was learning all about addiction, mechanisms of addiction, craving, loss of control. There's such a key part and that's kind of really what's driving those problems. And then I was going into the clinic and treating people who were dealing with binge eating and who were getting maybe that liver bariatric surgery. And they were using all the same language of addiction. Just craving, I want to cut down and it's bad for me, but I can't stop. And once I start, I really struggle. And it was clearly not all food. Like no one ever said to me, broccoli. Once I eat that, the whole head of broccoli is suddenly gone. And I got bananas, the whole bushel. Real food just doesn't seem to do that. It was all foods like donuts and chips and chocolate goodies and pizza and all that. And so, at that moment, it really climbed me, really what is so different about how we create an alcoholic beverage, which starts with a grape, or a hop. And we just process it and refine it. So it delivers this just right dose of stimulation rapidly into our body, amplified with all sorts of sugars and flavor additives. And most people drink it and are okay. We drink a little more than they should, but they're not fully addicted. But there's a sizable portion of people who, once they start, they can't stop, and it can really ruin lives. So I thought about what's happened to our food environment and thought, geez, this ultra-processed foods have been, in many ways, engineered and jacked up far more than that glass of red wine. Really, could these products be considered addictive to those same lovers of I could dig into this, let me know if this is of interest, but, we know that when the industry's designing these products, they're doing tons and tons of research and development to hit these just right bliss points. So they're breaking down the food matrix, so it's just rapidly hitting our systems in ways you wouldn't even imagine. And then they're altering the flavor and sensory additives, so it's naturally hitting systems in your brain and your nose and your tongue that just hype up the appeal. And then they flood the market with it and market it like crazy and say, once you pop, you can't stop. And guess what? They're right. They're totally right.
Yeah, that's upsetting.
They are.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry, but those gummy nerds, like my kids have those those things.
Yeah.
Even I don't even eat candy like that. But like you start and you can't stop and you're like, what's happening? They're like disgusting but delicious at the same time.
100%. I always love reading, there's an interview with a food scientist and like, so it's amazing what they can do to engineer the chemical senses. Those people are like almost a little bit of a fruity, citrusy sort of burst, a little bit alongside if it was just, it's mostly sugar, but the flavor additives round it out so you're not just over it real quickly.
Right.
And they can design the molecules so you get a burst when you first get it, and your brain is just really kind of shocked into, wow, that was really intense. But if you notice, it fades really quickly. It doesn't last. It doesn't linger. And so then you're going back for another one, and you're going back for another one, and they're designing what they call moorishness. So you want more and more and more.
Right.
You have far more than you would pour.
So it's very intentional. It's very intentional
to
make us enjoy it, for it to hit our bliss point, and for us to want more and not be satisfied with just some. And none of that has anything to do with nutrition. Right?
It's totally. It's, and I feel like the thing I've been really musing on a lot recently is I actually don't think they're really pleasurable. Like I like a lot of them, like the first bite might be, or the satisfaction of the craving. But the more you learn about this stuff, you're just like, this is a bunch of nasty starch slurries that they've essentially pre-chewed, pre-digested, even pre-salivated with enzymes at some point. And then to make that seem appealing to me, they've had to blitz it with a bunch of colors and flavor additives and with texturizers. So I don't realize I'm eating cheap slaw, essentially. and that, like, when you start to think of it that way, rather than like their marketing of like, oh, this is happiness, this is delish, and you eat it, you're kind of like, this is actually really gross. Like, this is not this, like, and like if you eat an actual like fresh mango or a really crisp apple or a really beautifully cooked piece of salmon, you're like, oh, this is both pleasurable and satisfying in a long sort of way, but it doesn't trigger that intense craving, desire, kind of compulsive, I want.
Right.
And so with addiction, how much you actually enjoy or get satisfied for pleasure by the substance starts to get disentangled and from the actual how much you want it. So you'll start to want these things really intensely, even if when you consume them, they're not as good as you thought they'd be. And so to me, I've seen that so much, where people say, I don't really like it. I even like the taste of the food. I'm just shoveling it in my mouth so fast. And I feel sick almost immediately. Oh my God, but it's 3:00 and I'm stressed, and I walk by that one corner store that has like my favorite hit of, these titillating substances. I'm off to the races.
Right. Well,
there is something so satisfying about just the this motion.
Oh, yeah.
Right, like when you eat healthy, like we mostly eat healthy, you don't get that, whatever that is, right? You eat your food and you're like, I'm good. But when you eat the sweet thing, it's like you enjoy this whole, like, I'm putting something into my mouth.
I also think it's that, like, so in gambling, there's a term called dark flow. And it's this idea that you get in this really intense, repetitive, almost trance-like state. And who hasn't had this, like at the movie with a big thing of popcorn, and you're like,
Yes.
I don't even, where does that bucket go? You're in this trance almost.
Right, what is that?
So because these foods are so broken down and soft, and their food matrix has been altered, they just melt in your mouth, right? So part of the reason we don't get that with many real foods is like, count how long it takes you to break down a bite of broccoli. And how many chews. You can't keep shoveling the broccoli at the same pace because you're going to get a mouthful of broccoli. You actually have to chew it. And while you're chewing it, your brain is like, I'm eating, I'm getting calories. I'm eating, I'm getting calories. And it's clicking in your satiety signals, which turns down that desire nodule. When you're eating like those starch slurry UPFs, they're melting. You have to, I like was counting the day. I was like, it only took me like 2 bites on that potato chip before it has disappeared. And so it allows you to get in that like methodical trance-like state, which doom scrolling, social media, gambling, I mean, those sorts of things get you in that trance like state where you almost zone out. It's like the flow state that can be really positive when you're in it, but like they can also be used for dark flow, which is you get behaviorally kind of into that something with like a cigarette, right? It's that dark flow.
Yes,
So that
that back
behavioral
and forth.
piece is key in addiction as well.
Okay. Well, and you had mentioned a few minutes ago talking like how you talk to yourself about, well,
Yeah.
I don't even know if I want this. This isn't really what I want. Are there some things that people can do that you found to be effective in your research to manage that addiction that we all have?
Yeah. So first I want to start with like deep compassion. Like our system is rigged for profit to make anything I'm getting ready to tell you hard. And depending on your economic system and your privilege in this world, it's going to be more or less hard. And that is by design, but it's a handful of companies that are making a boatload of money off the status quo, and they're paying our government officials hand over fist. They lobby more than alcohol, tobacco, or gambling. And so like, this is the system we're in. And so if we feel like it's hard, yeah, I'm not gaslighting you. This sucks. But as you start to see these, really marketed UPFs, ultra processed foods, for what they are, which is cheap ingredients jacked up to stimulate but not satisfy, and you get angry and kind of disgusted by it, it makes it easier to resist those cravings when you see them for what they are. And for me, it's this, I don't want to give those corporations that are trying to go after my kids and like make my life harder as a parent. Like, no, I don't want to do that. So it like feels like a spot where I can take back some agency in my own life where there's so much commercial behavior that's making it hard. I also find that eating real food really helps. So in our lab, as much as you can, within your budget, within your time poverty, starting your day with a real food breakfast, even if that's some plain Greek yogurt and you throw some berries on it and some nuts, like some eggs, it can help start you off on the right foot. For people, I think snacks are a good one to give yourself a challenge of snacks. The APF snacks are really what fits a lot of people. And so that sense of like, I'm going to give myself a 2-week challenge, and every snack I'm going to have is going to be a real food. It's going to be a handful of nuts. It's going to be a banana. It's going to be an orange. Once we in our lab see that people spend even 2 weeks on real food, at the beginning, they can be like, this sucks. I'm having such bad cravings. I'm going through withdrawal. After a couple days, I didn't realize how much better my energy level was going to be when I was eating real food regularly. Wow, my cravings have started to fade. Oh, my like mood crashes that happen throughout the day are suddenly dissipating. I feel like we need to have like a dry January, but for like real food, where like, I think we've forgotten as a society, like what it feels like to actually be fueled by real food. And so I would love on a policy level if they like actually make real food cheap, convenient, and affordable rather than getting these companies all this tax base.
Yeah.
But as much as you can in your own life, figure out what are the real foods you can afford, that you enjoy, then keep them on hand as close and convenient as much of a staple part of your diet. Okay. The more nourished you are, the less sensitive your vulnerable your brain is going to be to those ultra-processed food cues.
Why isn't the real food and whole food addictive?
The system of the brain that addictive agents hijack is the system of the brain that was designed to make sure we got real food and social connection and water and achievement and mating partners, right? And the thing that happens is that when it's delivered in those natural packages, it's a low, slow release of something that's appealing. It's kind of like this up and a gentle wave, right? What happens with processing when it's driven by profits, is they break that down and rapidly mainline in naturally high doses into your body with this big spike. And maybe the brain's like, oh my God, that was amazing. And then it crashes. And then all of a sudden you want more. And that's how you create alcoholic beverages, tobacco, cigarettes, gambling, all this. So when you think of a nicotine pouch, it's got a lot of nicotine, but it's slow released into the body. That profile has very low addictive potential. People aren't just like covering their bodies in nicotine pouches. So like, it's got a lot of nicotine, but the way it's delivered doesn't get to people because you're not getting a spike and crash. Cigarettes spike and crash you. That's what the most dangerous ultra-processed foods do. They're designed to spike and crash your reward system regularly in natural ways. In Mother Nature, there are just bounds on real foods, plants, and animals in the way that Mother Nature delivers the most appealing macronutrients to us, the carbohydrates, the fats. So they never come packaged together. They always come packaged with the fibers and waters and proteins you have to chew them. So it's all about the delivery. And that's really what, when you look back on all our addiction epidemics, it's not like we suddenly discovered the nicotine chemical. Like there's nicotine in eggplant. Humans have been like processing tobacco for a long time. It was when the delivery mechanism of the modern cigarettes flooded our environment, and it became so hyper optimized and so marketed and so obsessive and targeted since you were a small child to be a lucky person or a moral person. That's the playbook of what's happened with our foods.
Okay. Wow. So what I'm hearing is, as far as the what we can do about it, it sounds like you talk to yourself. That helps me too. I say things to myself of like, I don't want that. Like, that's not food. Mark Hyman says that when he walks into the CVS. That's not food.
Yeah.
And then, but you're saying things like, I'm being manipulated to make me, by the food companies to make me buy this. I'm not going to give in to those food companies. I love that. So talking to yourself and then starting to replace some of the ultra-processed foods you might have in your day with whole foods, like your breakfast, starting your day, or doing a dry January or something, so that your body starts to recognize and appreciate the good feelings you get from eating whole foods. So that's the feeling you go after rather than that spike.
Exactly. And it's
not easy.
It's not easy.
Yeah.
I don't want to gaslight anybody, right? Like I don't want anybody to be like, it's like, yeah, this is a system that's been really built against us. And your brain is doing what your brain is used to, which is to pay attention to high-calorie foods from multiple sources. And that's, the industry's hijacked our nutritional wisdom against us. But the big example I keep thinking about right now is we are wired to want this sweet spot of things that are familiar. We want to make sure it's familiar. Like, okay, I've had a berry like that once before, and I didn't get sick. It wasn't poison. So if I were to try this new berry. But you want variety, because if you only have one food source, that food source you're not getting enough nutrition variability. If that food goes bad, all of a sudden you're screwed, right? They have kind of, I feel like, optimized almost as much as they can that way. Starch, slurry, emulsified fat bases of processed foods. So what they're doing now is grain chips. Like all the the Dorito Locos Taco. That was like one of the first ones where they did the Dorito Taco. Or right now, like Oreo, they're having Oreo flavored cookies or Coca-Cola flavored Oreos and Oreo flavored Coca-Cola. When you walk into the grocery store, it's gross. And yet it kind of pings a little bit that human tendency to say, that is familiar. I know these breads, but it's not. And I'm kind of intrigued. And now I'm not seeing the same Coca-Cola I've always seen. Now it's vanilla Coca-Cola. Now it's, whatever. And so that they're having to kind of futz around the edges and the brand mashups, flavor iterations. The big one is spicy. I think like sweet and spicy was like the industry's like big flavor profile. So your brain is thinking, oh my God, I'm getting new opportunities for food and nourishment, when really It's a starch slurry that they just altered a couple chemicals that they spray on it, and your brain thinks it's a new food source. Like, that's kind of what we're dealing with.
It's a starch slurry that they just
That's
spray
a technical term.
Yeah.
That is, I literally read a patent from a food company today that described their new novel technique as a pre-digested starch slurry.
Oh God!
So like this is not my term. This is the industry term.
Do you hear that, listeners? We're being manipulated. Like, this is just.
And the
So
kids,
exciting.
they get so excited about the new flavors
They
to talk,
do.
you know, to
Totally.
try, and then
And
they
all
talk
the
about it. And did you try
Celebrity endorsements.
Yeah.
It's really hard as a
terrible.
parent.
Okay, so let's shift over to food environment, because that's something you're also very well versed in. You've done research and you have a lab designed around it. How does food environment impact our behavior around our food choices?
Oh yeah, it's huge. I mean, so like the big thing is the industry knows this, and one of my favorite quotes was like a Coca-Cola executive who said, you know, our goal is to always keep our product within arm's reach of desire. And that is that if you have a moment of stress, hunger, you know, that constant defensive posture we all have to have all the time towards our food environment, that shield breaks down for a moment. It's right there, waiting for you. And we are not wired to bypass available food that's calorically dense to get to other options. Like that is, we were wired to be like, it's available. Like there's calorie, like grab it, baby. Like famine is just around the corner. And so we are constantly having to resist our own wiring that helped us survive, that helped us be here at this moment, which is where I think a lot of the compassion comes from. Your brain is doing everything it can to protect you, but unfortunately it's operating from an environment that hasn't existed for like 200 years, you know? So it's such a mismatch. And that piece too, that with the environment becomes the cues, that dopamine surge that you get when it comes to something that's addictive, it starts to move from the moment of consumption to the cues that signal it's available. And it's why, you know, you'll hear a jingle or somebody walk by a bar or, you know, smell a cigarette. Or those cues really get the dopamine system, which makes you want, which makes you crave, which makes you motivated. In our food environment, we are seeing just thousands and thousands of cues for mostly ultra-processed foods every single day. And so every single day, every single moment. And so you're just having to employ your willpower, your executive functioning to try and resist that. And for some people, they don't even have access to nourishing alternatives, right? And so it is, it's the playbook of tobacco and alcohol, the development of conservatives and the cigarette packs and the big lighters where you could almost like walk around and smoke, and people would smoke all the time. It became something that infiltrated every single environment that we were in. And so you had to be working to resist it. That's tobacco now because of policy. If you're trying to quit smoking, I don't see cigarettes very often. I don't see people smoking. I'm not in environments where I could smoke, but I have to resist. But we've replaced that with ultra processed food and social media and sports betting and all these other jacked up engineered factors that are so convenient. And again, I think that sense that real, sustainable, satisfying rewards often take time. And may take some effort. And in today's modern world where we all feel so time poor and kind of frantic, we're all just kind of, I don't know, sedating ourselves with these hits of addictive rewards that take the edge off for a moment to make it through the day. And that just feels so wildly wrong. Like, I'm so ready for us to say, no, like, we're clearly a society that is more physically and mentally unwell than we've ever been. Let's say we're not going to take it anymore. Like our like the policies, the regulations, like help us get what makes life worth living. Real food, real social engagement, real access to things like being in nature and rest. Like that's what makes a good life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if we could talk about the kids for a minute, because that's where
Sure.
my head goes to, right? Because I'm mature enough to know that like I need to eat healthy food and how to do so.
Yeah.
But if we know that studies show that infants and toddlers, when they're given choices of foods, they will choose what nourishes their body, and they have good instinct about that.
There.
But then it seems like they hit a point, and maybe you know what that point is, where they only want mac and cheese, hot dogs, candy, juice boxes, junk. What happens, and then how do we support them? Because even if we're giving them healthy options at home, they're bombarded around them.
100%. My one friend and I joke, we're both moms. I'm a mom of the 5 and 7-year-old. Many things are there. It's like, screw you, moms. Like, you know, like, let's make your life a little better. And food is a huge one, right? And to be honest, we don't know. Like, science does not know. Like, how the human infant is developing taste and preferences in this modern food environment, except for we see it's not working great, right? We have so many kids that have metabolic disease that never existed before the 1980s. Like, this is a modern plague. And we've somehow gotten kind of numb to this, you know, like, oh, all these children have fatty liver disease and diabetes. You know, why are we tolerating that? I don't know. Children as young as 1 are getting over 15% of the foods are ultra processed. And again, that's the incentive structure. That is what is being incentivized. And so for an individual parent, this sucks. It sucks. And I hope we rise up. Like, I've been really admiring the screen-free movement in schools and how there's been we're not taking this anymore, right? We don't want and there's been a movement. And I would love to see something similar. Eat Real is a food system, nonprofit that's focusing on helping to work within our current constraints to get real food back into schools. School lunch feels like a great place for us to advocate and say, we're not going to take it anymore. Give these schools the funds they need to get real food as the standard. Because as a mom, even if I'm trying to give my kid all the most minimally processed, fabulous foods, those PFs are designed to especially miss out our little ones' taste buds. And that's in part because kids are wired to want even more energy. They're even more sensitive to energy density in terms of calories than adults because they're growing so fast. Right. That worked wonderful for hundreds of years because they'd feel even more motivated to eat all the berries and like drink the milk when they got it. Now, what their taste buds are acclimating to and the sensory memories that they're getting on even in the pouches, the little like digestible things that are also health washed or like, hey, there's real fruit, you know, all this stuff. Right, yeah. We almost don't have any chance and to like do. So I'll tell you what I do with my own boys. I say this is not perfect. I am not a domestic goddess. I am doing the best I can as a working mom. It's like I am fruit and veggies biggest hype woman. I mean, like, I try and do like my own personal marketing to be like, wow, like blueberries are doing this, carrots are doing this. Oh my gosh. I try with every meal that we have a fruit and veggie. We talk about how good they are for your brain and can feel it from like the moment they could talk. Real big hype woman. I try as much as I can in my own home to control that environment to minimize the amount of those products that also, as a mom, I'm still tired. Like, my husband brought Oreos into the house and my 5-year-old had like an epic meltdown because he had 1 and then he wanted 4. And I was like, no. And I was like, never again, man. It just made my day so much harder.
I'm surprised your husband brought Oreos into the house. That sounds shocking.
I think maybe he was like, I was just out of town for work. I think he was making like, yeah, you go out of town. You want to see what happens?
We're going to rebel.
He was just like, and so my little guy, it made my life as a mom so much harder. And we all feel that, right? With the screens and like all these things you should be doing, while all these corporations are making it so much harder and breaking down all the social norms. So I'm having to feel like I'm fighting against the current and I'm just sick of it. And so I try as much as possible to make the default that. But it's hard. I wish there were more policies in place to help.
I will say that it sounds like, from what I see, that other countries do much better.
Oh, so
Lunches
we're
in
such an
school.
outlier.
Like when you see someone who's like, I'm an American living in France, and this is what my child gets for lunch at school every day, and in Japan and in China, and you see these meals, and you're like
all
holy
food.
cow,
Yeah,
I
real
want to
food.
go to school and eat that lunch.
Yeah.
Like they're beautiful. And then you've got
Totally.
like our processed like pizza bread and whatever.
Little
chicken
package
spots.
of the waffles they get at the
Yeah.
assisted
Sure.
It's a
food
mess.
programs and stuff.
It's a mess, and you're so right. I mean, I'm so glad you brought that up because there's a nihilism. There's like a hopelessness. And I'm like, we're the outlier. Like other countries are like Mexico, Chile, like Brazil, like in honor, like the other people are doing this. This is not rocket science. It wasn't like kids were like, hey, we can do this if we actually had the political will to invest in our children. And the unfortunate thing is that the food companies have had so much power and they don't like the ultra processing science because they love to play nutrient whack-a-mole with us. I mean, how many things can you shove with protein? If I see another protein donut,
That's
I'm
what I was going to
scream.
ask you next. I was going to interject since we were talking about
Totally.
kids and teenagers. I
Please.
have teenagers and young adults, and I'm a middle-aged woman, and so it's like
Yeah.
protein, protein, protein. So there's protein bars, there's protein smoothies, there's protein gummies, there's protein like powdered
Everything.
drinks that are juice. What is your take on that?
So I can tell you that the industry calls that functional indulgence. And it's giving people permission to eat an indulgent product by telling them it's serving a functional purpose. My work finds that if you have that addictive, refined carbohydrate base, it doesn't matter how much protein or fiber maxing or whatever you shove into that. It is not able to counteract that like addictive harmful of the base of the donut, of the gummy candy, of whatever. It's not going to nourish you in the way of real food would. It's in real food matrix. And I can tell you part of the reason that protein you're shoving into everything, a lot of it tastes bad. It's got a bad aftertaste.
Yeah.
And our body, if they put a lot of additives, they can put a lot of additives in it that it's called off-noting. The goal of it is to mask the icky, nasty,
Yeah.
chalky, bitter flavors.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think if we actually had to taste what those products were like without all the chemical shields, we would be stunned by how much they taste like crap and that our body is telling us,
Don't eat
this
it.
is probably not good. But because our nutritional wisdom is being tricked.
Yeah.
And again, that's a
Right.
page out of the tobacco book. Low tar cigarettes, it's got a filter. They didn't actually safety test any of that in an adequate way, especially for chronic disease. So that's artificial sweeteners, shove protein and everything. And then how long do we have to wait for the fact that there's no get out of jail free card?
Right. My oldest son is old enough that he works and is a
Mm.
young adult and buys some of his own food.
Yeah.
And like I open the pantry and I'll see he's got like his own basket and he's probably listening to this episode because he does listen to the podcast. He's got like high protein chips and high protein cookies, and I look at those and I just cringe a little bit and I just keep my mouth shut
Yeah.
because he's an adult and he can buy what he like. But I'm
Yeah.
just like, oh no.
Oh, but I know women my age who are interested in living healthy, and they do that too. They buy but it's high protein. It's a high protein bagel. And I'm like, it's still a bagel.
Just eat a regular bagel. Just eat a regular one.
Haven't you guys, I mean, I've lived through now since like a baby of the 80s where it's like I once was eating low-fat yogurt and pretzels to prep for prom because that was the healthy thing because it was the low in fat. And then we pivoted in college to eating like straight cream cheese, like sprinkled with flavor additives because it had no carbs. So that was healthy. And I feel like now, I feel like if you live long enough, you're like, okay, that nasty UPF base is so manipulable that they can put whatever collagens, the big one coming up this year, because you'll see collagen everywhere.
It's in everything.
It's like, it was like probiotics a few years ago. That is the industry creating the low tar cigarette to give people who want to eat healthy a belief that they don't have to eat real food, that this is the sin. And
Right.
the despite little evidence to suggest that, eating that protein donut is really providing the same
So the
benefit
food
as a real
companies
food.
are just trying to maintain relevance with what's
Totally.
on the trend and create and
Yeah.
drive business. But meanwhile, if we just ate real whole foods, we would
Yeah.
need none of that and be just fine.
100%. I mean, we were like that. We waved the magic wand, and all the worst UPFs floated in to get me through. I mean, there's some sadness. There's a number of UPFs that are like a soft spot in my heart for as an occasional food, right? They shouldn't be 60% of our food supply.
Right.
But we wouldn't die. We would thrive. We would live longer. So it's that vibe that they're not necessities for being able to live. They've tricked us into the system has become so dependent on those products because we haven't been investing in real food. And again, it always kind of ends up going back to this economic model of it's real easy to have a proprietary flavor blend that you've created in a lab for, I always get this into like flaming hot Cheetos. I don't have that. The chemical concoctions are proprietary. They're and corporation owned, and you start to crave this sensory blend, just like people crave the flavor of their brand of cigarette. It's hard for the companies to make as much profit off of real food because you can't. It's hard to. There's no proprietary blend of spinach, So it's harder for them to make as much as they can.
You don't think about
actually
that really.
food.
No.
Yeah. I mean, this is sort of like a summary of what we've been talking about, but it's people are starting to know. I think they're starting to understand because we're hearing it now, like with HHS coming out with with the food pyramid and saying eat real food is basically the headline. Eat whole foods. People will say, I know what I'm supposed to do, but I can't do it. And I think, and to your point again, with all the food environments, it's like a minefield. We can know what the right thing is, but you said if there's something that it's at your fingertips and you go into like Old Navy and they're selling you sugar and processed
candy and
carbs,
soda everywhere.
you can't go anywhere with that.
All the stores.
Go to get new tires and they're trying to sell you candy. It's
100%.
Yeah, we're just being so. It makes me.
It's everywhere.
Yeah. And if we all get angry enough, we can say enough.
Totally.
Stop
Enough.
making us
And that's.
sick. Right.
And that's what, I was really happy to see in California that passed an anti-UPF school lunch bill that says they need to phase out the most high-risk ultra-processed foods from the vendors that sell those schools. And that, to me, that was groundbreaking. That was like the first that really pulled that in. Okay. It would be, I always dream of a world where I could go into a grocery store and do you know where the alcohol is in a grocery store, right? There's an alcohol section. Sometimes in certain states, the most harmful alcohols, they're only in state-run stores, but you can still go buy, you have individual choice. But I'm not walking around the beverage section meaning to pick up milk and accidentally picking up like an alcoholic beverage, right? Because they look the same. We have labeled and set regulations in the beverage rule to distinguish those sorts of beverages. Even though they're mostly water, they have an addictive harmful agent. But food, we call them all food. And when we really look at the most high-risk stuffs, they're much more like that alcoholic beverage. They don't even have the same molecular structure as a real food. Let's treat them like we do in the grocery store where there's a UPF section. And if you want to, certainly. But if you want to avoid UPFs, the rest of a grocery store and incentives for the grocery supplies, tax breaks, marketing incentives for any grocery store that's really able to have a common sense, real food grocery store. I would love to see that. That would make my life so much easier.
That's an interesting proposal. I hadn't thought of that. That's great. Like you separate it saying this isn't the same.
Yeah.
This is addicting and different. And
Yeah.
And you called it alt foods? Alt? Like alternate?
Like ultra. I probably like my ultra processed, the different alt. Yeah, just
Alt
those things,
foods.
they're so jacked up. So there's something about that I think really, really we need to require our government officials who knew how it is sort of stuff. They've done it before. They can do it again. We've had success with opioids, with tobacco, with alcohol, of having common sense reforms in how it is an environment, how kids are exposed to it. I have a dream that with gambling, sometimes the gambling companies will get taxed on the windfall gambling profits they make from the behavior. Man, let's tax the heck out of the corporate winnings for any portfolio that is mostly selling addictive, harmful ETFs, and use that to make real food cheap. That would be my dream,
Again,
I need some help.
Are you working
Let's
with
do
the policymakers, Ashley?
I ramble occasionally.
These are great
Sometimes they look at me
ideas.
like I'm wild, but I'm like, we're doing it. We're doing it if we stop thinking of this as food and start thinking of it as an addictive engineered substance, the policy options that we know will help are there. And in here, we already have an alternative which is real food. With opioids, we pain relieving medication. We're really still struggling to develop a non-addictive effective food. We don't have to develop food that nourishes us. We found about it. It's tasty and yummy. We just incentivize the wrong things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. This is great. We like to ask all our guests the same two questions at the end of the episode.
Fun.
The first one is, Ashley, if you could give our listeners one takeaway to do after listening to our discussion today, what would it be?
My first, the main one is, I hope you can treat yourself if you're struggling with some compassion. I just, being from the addiction world, the shame stop on the bus was so strong, and shaming and belittling ourselves for what is the expected consequence of living in this sort of commercial environment. You're been up against a Goliath, and you haven't had clear information. And so I hope you treat yourself with some grace and kindness, and that will free up some energy to take steps in the direction of making your hurt in your head and in your body healthier. So that I think is an essential piece of reclaiming their opportunities.
That's great.
Nice.
Thank you.
All right. And also, we always like to ask our guests, so we like to say here at the podcast, don't panic, just pivot. Is there a pivot or small change you've made in your life that you're proud of that you'd like to share with us?
I love that. So I am a big fan of meditation. I feel like part of the struggle is that I think in this modern world, we've lost connection with our bodies. Our bodies are such a source of wisdom. And I think we're all, we're frantic and our bodies are all inflamed with these crappy foods and so I have really tried in an ideal world of meditating for a half hour. That is not happening. My kids are going to be on me in 2 seconds. But so I've tried to put in many doses of just brief meditations in between meetings where I try to reconnect with my body and just be present in the moment in my body. A couple breaths. So I'm just rushing through my day with frantic adrenaline frenzy and then crash at the end of the day. And I'm trying to, I've pivoted a little bit to do that in a way. I kept trying to do it in a much bigger way. It just wasn't realistic in the current chapter in life. And so I've met myself with compassion of where am I and what can I do? And it's actually made such a big difference. And I leave my day feeling much more, present and happy and ready to spend time.
I love that. That's great.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, Ashley. We really appreciate all your wisdom and experience, and thanks again. It's great.
Oh, totally. My pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Digestible Podcast with today's guest, professor and researcher, Dr. Ashley Gearhardt. If you liked today's episode, please share us with others. It's the best compliment you can give us. If you have any questions or comments, you can email us at info@digestiblestrategies.com. We look forward to hearing from you, and remember, don't panic, just pivot. The content shared on this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. We are not medical professionals, and the views expressed here are not intended to diagnose, treat, or cure any health conditions. Always consult with a qualified healthcare provider before making any health-related decisions.